This is Joe W. Bristol, and we've been two little parts here now to about our strife on a job. And I've decided I'm going to do maybe one or two more here, probably part one, part two on this subject. This was offshore one time. What happens when things can't be handled that amicably? Sometimes things just blow up. And I'm going to tell you this story about something that just blew up. It's one of many, okay? I am working for a company off and on sometimes doing platform work. When the pipeline work wasn't going, wintertime, I'd go work on platforms. And this contractor used me a lot. I knew the personnel guy really well. He calls me up one day, and he's in a bind, and I'd heard about it. He was in a bind on a job because they had a superintendent. And let me say at the start, this guy knew what he was doing. He was very good at his work, but he had some really lousy people skills. He would have been better suited to work on drilling rigs, and I'm saying it as somebody that worked on drilling rigs for a while, okay? Nothing wrong with drilling rigs, but a different world than welding, particularly pipe welders. So he calls me up, and I heard they had trouble on this job. Couldn't get nobody to stay. Welders were quitting, or not quitting, but getting fired. So this guy is kind of a stocky guy, and so this personnel guy calls me up and says, "Gerald, man, I'm in a bind. I need you to go out there. Da da da. I need two welders that have Transcontinental Gas Company papers." Now this was an oil platform for Shell, I believe, but we had to have gas company papers. And he couldn't find anybody that had them or wanted to work on offshore platforms. Pipeliners don't usually like to work on platforms, yada, yada, yada. And so I said, "No, I don't think so. I've heard about the strife. I've worked with him before. We don't get along." And he said, "I promise you, we've had a talk with him. The owners had a talk with him, and he can't fire nobody." And I said, "You telling me the truth?" Yeah. He said, "You know anybody else?" I said, "Yeah, I got a roommate." And I said, "He's got Transco papers." And he was like elated. "Well, please go out there." I said, "No, we're not going out there and weld at low hydrogen. We're not going to do all that junk. We're just going to go out there and stay 3 or 4 days, and we're going to make your tie-ins as they get it fitted up." They had to bring a riser up from the ocean floor to the platform, tie it into the meter skids and stuff. Okay, that was the deal. So we get out here on this job, and we got off that helicopter and walked down to the office. This guy saw us both, and he was like, "Oh, no. Here come these two guys." And so I can tell, I didn't say anything to him, but I knew he'd been told he couldn't fire us. And I could see his butt tighten up. But he, or go down here to your quarters and your beds are going to be in room such and such. And so it started off okay. Well, the next morning, he says, "Look, it's going to be a while fitting that gas company stuff up." He said, "I need you guys to go over here with so-and-so and so-and-so and weld this 2-inch pipe." And my friend says, "What?" He said, "I don't think so. We're not going to do that." And he said, "Well, you're not just going to sit around here." And he said, "Well, then we'll go home, but we're not going to weld that. That was the deal we made. We'll come out here and weld your little gas pipe, and we're going home." Boom. So he was mad. He walked off. So it goes on there a little bit, and that night I see him walking around the platform there. And I had just been a Christian a very little while, and I was caught between the old Gerald and the new Gerald. So I see him walking around, and I said, "Well, let me go over here and talk to this guy." So I catch him by the handrail, and I'm telling him, "Look, you and me have had trouble in the past, and I'm sure some of it was my fault." And I was trying to be all nice and sweetie puss, and it kind of worked. And so curmudgeon turned around, and he says, "Well," he looked at me, what to say. He said, "I appreciate you saying that." And I said, "What do you say we just start over?" He said, "Yeah, we can do that. Let's start over." Okay, everything's all sweet. Jesus is Lord, and we go upstairs to bed. But the next day, things started unraveling. I'm welding on something and some fabrication for that gas company, and I don't see my partner around. And so I go looking for him, and he's up in the quarters, and he's packing his bags. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "That old blankety blank, me and him just got into it, and he fired me." And I said, "He fired you?" He said, "Yeah." And so hands are talking to him, and nobody liked this foreman, and there'd been trouble on the job already. So I go up there to talk to him. And next video, I'm going to tell you how that turned out.